Welcome back to Unrated Podcast. Here you have Elijah alongside G. We're going to get into another Lions draft preview. This time we're focusing on defensive linemen, nose tackles in particular. It's kind of what we focus on. I think we both would agree that we think our edge rushers are elite, or are at least young elite players. So heading an upward trajectory as far as that goes. So I think we both kind of leaning towards hopefully getting one of these guys with an earlier pick. So I'm kind of going to throw it over to you first. Wanted to see. I know we really encapsulated the defense last time. All the pieces and what we thought we were kind of missing. So with the sixth pick here, kind of who are some players you're looking at as far as the defensive line goes?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think overall, just kind of reiterate we talked about last week. I think line of scrimmage, that's where games are won and lost. I mean, I think this is more of a need than DB in a sense. I think they're close, but I think this is where you look at a lot of the teams in the playoffs this year. I mean, the Eagles literally have Brandon Graham, former Michigan legend, coming off the bench, quote unquote, is like six man. He had 11 sacks this year. I think if we have any opportunity to be able to like take that next level, we got to start to compile just like, I think it'd be great to have like 7 to 8 D linemen and defensive ends, be able to interchange them, throughout the season to really be successful, at the line of scrimmage. Got to stop the run, be able to get off, give the DBs, put them in a better position to be able to be more successful on third down by getting more pressure on the quarterback on like third and long. So yeah, I think this is where it really does start. But yeah, I mean, I think just to kind of kick things off, I don't know what Detroit's plans really are. We are kind of like that weird like sixth pick, kind of like to be that top five, or are kind of like on that side of things where on the outside looking in almost. Um, Definitely want to just talk about Jalen Carter. I mean, he might not be there depending on what we decide to do, but I think that'd be somebody that if we're able to find a way, to land him somehow, not much more need to be said. I mean, we saw him lift the quarterback up, the number one earlier against LSU. Literally, just an absolute game wrecker. I mean, you watched him all season just blowing up other O lines, plays in the SEC. Has all the tools. Um, I say after him, really it comes down to, kind of like what you like, what you don't like. I mean, I'm hearing the guy, Miles Murphy from Clemson, Brian Breesy from Clemson as well. Murphy seems to be more of like the like freak athlete, just maybe like a little more raw from a technique standpoint. And then Brian Breesy's one of them guys where they think he has this major upside, but um, he has some injuries here and there to where, that might be a little bit of a concern. He only played like 25 games his entire like college season. So I think there's definitely some upside as far as, some of them guys that are kind of, in that they're having, people are having conversations about in that top 10 and going in that top 10. Um, yeah, I mean, I think overall, like any of those three, I think I'd be, content with. And this saying as well, this is prior to, combine. Not that stuff necessarily matters, but, as we start to understand more of the testing where players are at, after they do all that testing, I think as of right now, I'd be, okay with like, any of those guys from like a D line standpoint.
Yeah, no. So I agree with you that you take a look at the Eagles. I'm just going to touch on that again. You brought up Brandon Graham. Sue, I think is like a bench player, definitely a bench player, but just a guy that, and that's Sue's definitely a Hall of Famer. Brandon Graham's probably a Hall of Famer as well. So you got two Hall of Famers riding your bench, and it's not I it's not a joke that that's why they're in the Super Bowl. You take a look at the Chiefs as well. Handle business on both sides of the ball as far as line of scrimmage goes. So I think that is the bread and butter consistency every year as far as the Super Bowl goes. Is your defensive line and offensive line handle the business. Our offensive line seems to be great,
Mm-hmm.
seems to be good. I think we should maybe possibly address just a backup need later on in the draft. But that's a whole nother story. But I think we got to really continue to focus on what we have cooking as far as his defensive line goes. You have to see what Hutch, what the special talent that Hutch is. See the special talent that Houston is. See Pascal what he could do once he came back healthy. In his 6-8 game stretch.
Yeah.
You throw in somebody and then like Jalen Carter, I think what I read at least they have him listed at 6'3", 305. With names being mentioned like Warren Sapp, Sue, Aaron Donald. If you're in that type of company, you cannot go wrong. If he's anywhere in that breath, he could be a great defensive tackle for us for years to come. Along with what we already have, that is how you go ahead and win the division. That is how you take that next step forward. And so I think if Jalen Carter's there, which I'm not sure if he will, some mock drafts he is, others he's not, I would get him not without a question.
Yeah.
Um, and I not typically we moved up last year, I know, and I was not a big fan of that as far as moving up and getting JMO. We'll see what he turns into, but if the draft capital is not too much, I would possibly consider, maybe moving on up to like if he's sitting there at 4 or
Yeah.
something like that. I'm not. I think he is possibly that special of a talent. Obviously, just be honest when it comes to big boys that much, a lot of them do fizz out and maybe a little. I don't want to put a stamp on them, but a lot of those guys turn out to be slightly lazy or whatever. So you have to definitely do your due diligence. But if that game tape it does not does not lie. If he wants to be great, he will be. So
Yeah.
yeah, and then as far as the number 2, I put Brian. How you pronounce his last name is Brees. Is that how you officially saying it? But
Reese?
yeah, but I'm going to mirror a lot of the same things you said. A couple of little blurbs I wrote about him just for my notes were hurt, ACL, raw, and 3.5 sacks.
Yep.
So I think, just looking through it, I think that is exactly what what you're going to get. You're going to get a guy that when he's on the field, he's solid, he's good, but he does have that injury bug, and that scares you when guys can't stay healthy on the field in college. It's twice as physical, 3 times as physical when you get to the NFL, and you are literally in the trenches. So your body has to be able to take that beating week in and week out. So that definitely scares me. But if he's a guy that can stay healthy, I don't see why why you wouldn't take him. I also think this. If I'm just going to say this with that 6th pick, I think you're also in that spot where one of them quarterbacks might be there. It's kind of hit me afterwards where somebody might fall in love with whoever. Let's say Will Levis or whatever is still there, or CJ Stroud happened to fall or something like that. I think you can really flirt with that 6th pick, and dangle that in front of somebody and maybe pick up a couple other draft picks on his back end. I just wanted to say that I forgot to mention that earlier. I think that is a possibility for the 6th pick as well, depending on how them quarterbacks fall and who falls in love with who. I think that is the benefit of being in that 6th spot. It's like you're outside looking in, but you're also, if somebody falls a little bit, you're in that spot where people would jump in and unload some picks. But yeah, those are the 2 I definitely have for 6. And then my third option I would say would be I think we definitely have to potentially look and trade back if the guy we're not in love with is there. I think if there's an option to trade back, once again we are not a single player away from where we need to be. So I think if you can get another couple of picks inside that top 50, top 40, some starters, I think that might be a possibility as well. But I think obviously we have a decent amount of draft capital here, so you're circling back around at 18. So who do you like maybe later half as far as that 18 pick goes?
Yeah, no, I said we talked about him. We forgive us. We probably gonna butcher his name. Start off Siaki, Ika. I like him. I think.
Good,
I
good as
think
I
my
got.
thing. You said what?
As good as I can do.
Yeah. So I think I like him. I like what I saw. My only thing is, I was kind of reading some stuff up on him. He's actually like they've kind of noticed that he played a lot better at 340. Now he's at like 360. There's always like things with these type of players. You just you never know like if they're them guys that kind of get too big or because that
Put like
starts
Albert Hainsworth
to
on you.
yeah, because that starts to like they go from playing 40 snaps to 30 snaps and 30 snap. You know what I'm saying? Where it just kind of like that production starts to go down quite a bit. But then again, I think I still just think back about how we were just getting gashed in the run. So for so much like earlier on in the season, we were able to kind of clamp down on that a little bit more towards the end of the season. But I'd love to be able to like I wouldn't mind taking a flyer on like somebody like Siaki Ika, late round, you know what I'm saying? As long as he's, we do our due diligence and, the weight issue is something that we find is not a concern. Um, I think it'd be, fantastic to be able to just add, significant D line depth, just in that first round alone. I think just even, somebody else I had that, I thought would be, a good fit. I don't think they're going to be, so much in that first round. So I guess I'm kind of like gradually just going into that day two, late for like early second
Yeah.
round, I'm be a homer as well. I think Mozzie Smith. I mean, I think dating back to earlier in the season, I remember he was number one on this list for this famous like college football analyst Bruce Feldman on this freak list. There's like video footage of Mozzie Smith literally hitting like these vertical jumps up like
Yeah, no, he's a
these
freak.
stairs and just showing like how he can move well in space. I mean, we watched him play every week. We know like a lot about him. I think that that'd be somebody I wouldn't mind. Us getting looking at in that range. Whether like I said, I don't think he'll be a first round guy, but I do think as we start to kind of discuss more of that day two, that early second round, we have like a solid amount of picks. That's somebody that I would definitely would be happy to see them potentially look at. So
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. So I also have the Siaki guy on here, and I'm gonna mimic a lot of the same things you said. But just the one additional thing I would say is I personally do like the defensive tackles to be large. Like I kind of I don't know, I just like that idea, I guess, but more than anything. I tend to like root and be a fan of those type of defensive tackles. So that is intriguing to me.
yeah,
But when you start to get when you're, I'm assuming 22 years old and already 360.
yeah,
That you ain't even really got your man weight on you yet through your mid 20s. So he ain't gonna be able to play at 375, 380. That's just not feasible. So I
right,
think that just shows a lot. And also additional, he's playing in what would that be, the Big 12?
yeah,
Probably the most pass happy league in the Power Five. And he had 0 sacks. So obviously, like you said, that could be a bit of technique, or not technique, but a scheme,
system, yeah,
like we said before we hopped on. But that's just something that's kind of alarming to me. I would think when you're playing teams that are easily dropping back 40 times a game, and you can't make things happen one time, or something doesn't happen by accident at least one time, a little alarming. So that's the one thing I'll say about that. Next, I would put Kaija Cansey from Pittsburgh. Exact opposite of the last guy. About 80 about 80 pounds less and 4 or 5 inches shorter. But very
might be
quick.
100. We'll
Yeah.
see what the combine weight's looking like.
Yeah, no, I'm saying he could be a dude. I mean, I don't know for sure, but being that little, he might pop off like something crazy. 4.8s,
Mhm.
something like that, 4.7s. And really fly up his draft board. I think he's
Yeah.
watching all these highlight tapes. I would say his is the most intriguing because he blows past offensive linemen.
Hmm.
I don't even. There was a couple of times where they didn't even touch him. He also, when you look through it, he has the most sacks as far as any player that I have on my list, was 7 sacks this season, 18 tackles, and just everything that I watched. I could say is he's quick, he's fast, twitchy. I mean, there's literally a couple of times where them guards didn't even lay a hand on him. He blew right past him. Quarterback had barely made it through his first progression, and he was already to him. So I think that's all things I like, and I think he will be there at that 18. And he's one of them guys that, I'll be honest, I didn't know much about him until we started doing these things. So depending on how this combine goes and whatnot, but if he's a guy sitting there at anywhere in this draft, especially later, if the dominoes fall, I would definitely take him.
Yep.
Next
I
guy, I'm actually putting on. I guess I put a star next to his name. And this is a guy that one other guy that I watched a few times throughout the season. And he plays for Florida. That's Javon Dexter. Just looking at him, he's a freak. He's 6'6", 320. He had 2 sacks, an interception, 2 forced fumbles, um, 22 tackles and 4 tackles for a loss.
mm,
He's rocking the gold grill, dreads. He and I just look at watching his tape. Another guy that he's ragdolling people. He's making it look easy. Seems to be just he doesn't being that tall. He doesn't look 320. So he looks physically imposing, and he's just ragdolling anybody he's across from. So he's a guy that just watching his highlight tape is impressive, and just reading this saying that he could be anywhere from sneak into the 20s in as far as a mock draft to somewhere in the mid second round. So another guy that I think if he's sitting there, he's going to be a dog in the league. I'm watching a highlight tape, seeing just all the things there. He's going to be he'll be good. He'd be a star.
Yeah.
Definitely a dude you should look out for. I mean, 2 sacks, an interception, and 2 forced fumbles is a hell of a season.
Yeah, you like to see that from D linemen too, because that just shows like they most time they got their hand in the ground in them trenches, but just having awareness, that IQ to be able to, granted the system probably put him in situations to be successful, but he's still showing that he's making them type of plays that you just don't see from big men making. You don't see big men making those all too often.
Right.
Kalijah Kancey, man, that is just like that's such a like intriguing like guy to me because I always cook off the ball. You know what I'm saying? Just able to. Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Back, yeah, no.
Yeah, and it's just like cause I can almost see him kind of being like a. I mean, he just how James Houston like he's not like a every down guy, but he's just like that like weapon that comes in on like third down. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I think I can see like Kalijah Kancey being like a nose
Designated sack.
tackle.
Yeah, not a designated hitter, like designated sack, expert.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
like third and long. You know what I'm saying? Got the dime package out there. He might be somebody you can throw in there, off the
Pin his
edge.
ears back. Yeah.
Right, yeah, and just like be able to be quick enough to just kind of get up under a couple different linemen, break through a couple different double teams. So no, I'm a fan of him too. I think the only thing is like maybe kind of concerns me is like, I know there's old linemen that are like 30, 40 pounds bigger than him that might just get their hands on him and like, it's the league. So you know what I'm saying? Where like be a little difficult for him, just from like a size standpoint. But hell, I mean, we watch Aaron Donald. I think they're essentially the same size. Donald might have a couple inches on him, a couple extra pounds on him. They both played at Pitt, so there might be some might be a little what do you call it?
Yeah,
Lightning in a
foreshadow.
bottle.
Yeah.
Just some potential there that
No, that's a
someone
great point. I didn't think about Aaron Donald. I mean, obviously, you don't want to compare anybody to Aaron Donald.
right.
But I think the one thing, I mean, we did earlier. At least I did with Jalen Carter, I guess. But the
Mm-hmm.
one thing I would say is about Aaron Donald is he is just as strong as an ox. That's why he can get away with doing that at 290. He's as strong as a 390 guy.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah.
you
Workout
really,
warrior.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, like I said, I like that they, same came
mhm,
from the same school. So, there might be some, some
similarity there, for sure.
potential there to be a nice little pick. Um, what other guy just real quick that I forgot to mention that's more in this like day two side of things is Carl Brooks from Bowling Green. I don't know, man. Anytime I just see like a D lineman, just show athleticism, able to get to the quarterback. I mean, he graded pretty high pass rushing, graded pretty high in run defense. He's showing like what I've seen being around 300 pounds, showing that versatility. I read some stuff that say he could like be like an only down, like an every down kind of guy, can play on the edge as well. Because what I like, what they kind of did, they had Hutch kind of more on the edge. It's kind of like that's more like his bread and butter, what he's used to.
Yep.
But I like seeing where we had guys like Pascal that can play edge, can play inside. I mean, I
Moving
think
around. Yeah.
yeah, other big fella, call him JJ Watt, CBS JJ Watt, Kaminsky. He played, inside, playing on the edge as well. And I think just like that's another guy that I kind of forgot to mention, in that I don't think first round necessarily, but like that day two, side of, part of the draft to where, you know, athleticism can move around a little bit. I just think that's pretty much what the league is now. You got a lot of these guys that are 300, 290, can play all across the line, and
Right.
I just
Right.
think that
Yeah. No, I think you made a great point on that. I mean, anytime you can be stay on the field and not have them key in on you, like not be able to particularly move the fullback or tight end over to chip you every time or whatever. You can move you around and you stay equally as effective. That's a very good a plus. So
Mhm.
I think we should try to build a defensive line like that, where you are systematically having players that are well rounded. So I
Yeah.
agree with you. I think this defensive line is young and produced a lot of sacks this year, a lot of disruption, and I think I obviously it's the key to anything. But I mean, when you look at you're gonna have to deal with uh, Justin Fields, and he had a couple field days on you. He's just getting started. You have to deal with him. Whether Aaron Rodgers is there, whatever they do, I'm sure he's coming back hard. Or if not, they'll be reloaded in another way. I think you're in a division where you have to disrupt that backfield. And that's obviously uh travels well. It travels well on in the road. It travels well in the playoffs. So I think you really have to capitalize on this. But a lot of these players look good. It's I think, and it's easier for a defensive lineman to flourish when there's other good defensive linemen around.
Yep.
Then you kind of defensive line. I feel like often as a time when there's a couple of good guys, they operate as a unit. That's always what you hear about, the unit as the defensive line. They become one.
Yep.
And I think that's easily what we can begin to cook up here, where we're star studded, like you said, 7 dudes deep, front to back, and so I agree. I think a lot of
Yeah.
these guys look good. So
Yeah, I think one of the things too, and just to like even give an example, like having just like a very deep like D line. I feel like as James Houston started to come on, like Hutch, he had like I think he had like a sack like one of the first 2 games of the season. I had like 3 against Washington. Kind of
mhm.
struggled a little bit. He still ended up finishing like with like 10. But as you saw, like Pascal come back and James Houston come back, like they could no longer just be like, we're gonna send a running back, we're gonna chip Hutchinson with a tight end, we're gonna just like give all the attention to him because we know these other guys can't really win. But as soon as Houston came off that practice squad and started winning on the other side, I mean that's just another thing that the defense or the offensive coordinator for the team is like, all right, like now we thought it was just Hutchinson we got to worry about. Now they got Pascal out there. Now they got Houston out there, and then we could add a couple of these dudes that are just have this like whatever they can play inside outside. I mean, you're just making it to where once again going back to that line of scrimmage, you make the offensive line's job hard. Like who to block, can't figure out who to block. You start getting that interior pressure because you get the edge pressure, like that can take care of like your pocket passers. You know what I'm saying? But getting that interior pressure, I feel like that's where you can really just like, or excuse me, interior pressure gets, that really gets into the pocket passers. Edge, like the edge pressure, that really, can tend to keep them guys that are mobile, more in the
Yeah,
pocket.
right.
That tends to give them more of the problems. And I think if we can just find a way to just have both, interior pressure and that pressure off the edge. I mean, that's essentially, like you said, you watch the playoffs, you watch what the Eagles did, you watch what the Niners have been doing to people all season. I mean, a lot of these guys, they just have 7, 8 players that can play all over that line that can just dominate that O line and just make that, make the job harder for the O line overall. And that's just how they're going to be able to win a lot more games.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's the key to success. And I just later round dudes that I had on here just to finish it
Yep.
off with, I had Maji Smith on here. I think, I'm reading a lot of some of the things you are, a second, third round.
Yeah.
We don't have to get into it. You had a blicky charge that'll probably move you back a little bit. So I think in general, I think he's a good player. We watched him play for the last 4 years, 3 years, week in and week out. And
Mhm.
we said this before we hopped on, but seeing how he didn't have the greatest stats, but knowing the difference maker he was, maybe shine light on some of these other guys who maybe their stats weren't as high as well, but just maybe the disruptor that they were.
Mhm.
That's often what it's defensive line is a dirty job. And you're not necessarily going to get the stats all the time for a play that you made. Ultimately,
Mhm.
you made the play, but somebody else got the tackle. You made the play, somebody else got the sack. I think that's often, it's a selfless job. But
Yeah,
in
it
general, I
is.
think you continue to build that D line, and I think I feel very confident in saying, I guess, maybe I'm putting my foot in my mouth here, but most you talk to any offensive coordinator, the hardest thing to probably plan against a scheme against would be a great defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
That disrupts everything from beginning to end. From snap of the ball, it's on, and
Timing, all
I
that.
think yeah, messes up the timing. Gets quarterbacks get antsy, running backs get antsy. It's the whole ordeal. So I think we got that bubbling a little bit, and some of these guys can really set it off the edge. So
Yep.
yeah, no, I'm. This is what I'm most excited for. I think we can really, if they double down again, because we went Panay Sewell, Hutch, we come back again with an offensive or with a defensive lineman, then you could tell we're really trying to build this from inside out. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe we have turned the page because I think this is you turn the page in the draft as well. I think you can't blow these when year in and year out. If you're on Lions Twitter, you'll see, oh my God, the Lions drafted whoever when this Hall of Famer is 2 picks after. The Lions drafted this guy when this Pro Bowler was right after. I think we see that weekend and so I think if we
Yeah.
stop doing that and start drafting some of these proper guys, and I think a lot of them happen to be on the offensive defensive lineman side of the ball. So I think if we
Yeah.
can go 3 for 3 on that, I think we've turned the page. 3 for 3, Sewell, Hutch, Jalen Carter, we
Yeah.
we own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like I said, you think about that turnaround, defensive coordinator that kind of simplifies, Glenn simplifies some things. And you just know, you call it what it is. Call it what it is. When Campbell came in there, it's pretty much like a skeleton team. You got some guys in there that have some players like Michael Brockers from the Rams. He didn't play really a ton this year just for being hurt or whatever. Probably not gonna be back next year. We do have that dude, Aleem McNeil, freak athlete, was like a dog ass baseball player. Didn't know that till later, earlier last year, towards the end of the season. But he's like they've said he's made like leaps and bounds. I think he was a second round pick, maybe third round pick 2 years ago. So you're just starting to see like guys like him come on, and what I like too, just with you know, when it comes to once again free agency, there's some flexibility there. Maybe to be able to get like a proven
Yeah.
name. Maybe sign them like a nice little like prove it deal, something like that. Throw them a nice little piece of change, nothing crazy. But I also just like too going back to the draft. I mean, there's a lot of guys we didn't discuss that. I was, I know we both want like more of these guys to come sooner rather than later, just because of the talent that is going to be like pretty top heavy in the first round, and even going into that second round. Um, but as we go on, you start to hear about the combine, and more players start to kind of come out the woodworks. It looks like from a glance, I mean, you got a good set of like D linemen, some guys that are just like run stoppers. You got some guys that can run, stop the run and be effective in the pass. Um, just a lot of players out there that I hope
Right.
we can take a flyer on that mid round and just really continue to build out this D line.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think because there are so many great players at the top of this draft, top heavy, I think a lot of these guys who normally would be, I think on a lot of given years, Mozzie Smith's a first round pick. On a lot
Mm-hmm.
of given years, some of these guys might be, higher picks, but because it's a very the Jalen Carters and the top of the draft seems very legit. Some of these guys might be sitting around in their 40s and 50s. So I agree with you that it might be time to spin back around, go ahead and get another one of these guys while they're around because I agree with you though. It is
Yeah.
it seems to be like that's right. This was pretty entertaining to do because a lot of these guys just had phenomenal tape.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I'd be mad for getting any of these guys in particular. That's how good a
Yeah.
lot of these guys seem. I think all these guys are real Sunday NFL players. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, so I'm excited about just seeing where this D line continues to grow, like you said earlier. And I don't know, man, if we got a spot where we're able to find a way to get in that top three to get a shot at Jalen Carter. And we're talking about ends, edge rushers next week, but just, even maybe getting a peek at getting a chance to get Will Anderson. I mean, that just takes your defense to a whole that like last year they skipped some. Like, I feel like last year they kind of skipped a couple, sped up the rebuild a little bit. You
yeah.
find a way to get one of them dudes in that top five, that top three, that top five. I mean, sky's the limit if you're able to
No,
build on.
call me crazy. Call me crazy. Will Anderson sitting there at 6. I take him.
Oh,
Yeah, no,
100%.
I think regardless that you had Hutch last year, that Houston came on that I think you go ahead and take them and figure out the rest.
You just tell them
We're
to
gonna have the freshest D lineman
first
of
one
all.
to the quarterback win. Y'all have a mini competition with yourselves. One guy the other edge, other guy the other edge. Just get, try to get to that quarterback. That'll be, I mean, having that for 8 to 10 of the next years in the NFC North, like it's a very vital time to where, a lot of teams are still trying to figure it out, or whatever that looks like. I mean, that you set yourself up for success, in my opinion. You're turning yourself into a playoff team
Yeah.
if you're able to just
If
make
nothing
some
else, you'll put the fear of God in the quarterback every week.
right. Yeah, put yourself in a good position. If you make a couple of these decisions, and just please stay away from Michael Mayer, the tight end. No disrespect to him, we gotta stay on the defensive side of the house. My opinion is first round, whether it's I think D line first, and then cornerback, and then use them later rounds to find them gems on defense. I think we'll be good to go next season.
No, 100%. You got anything else?
That's all I got. So I know we'll try to dive into the edge rushers. A lot of good edge rushers too,
No.
top to bottom. So looking forward to diving into that next week.
Yes, sir. We'll be back at you next Sunday or Wednesday.